Transforming in CSS involves changing certain properties of elements. Today we're going to be discussing the CSS Transform Property. This allows us to rotate, scale, move, or even skew an element on our screen. Now in most cases, we will be using the Transform property in a 2D space, but you can change certain 3D properties as well. I'll only focus on a few as there is quite a number of them, or the same rules can be applied to the next one. To get us started, we need to target an element on our web page. In this case, we have a box right here. So I'm going to target the box class and then put in curly brackets. Now from here, we simply use the transform property to show that we're about to change a few things. Now the values that you see over here are what will help us decide on what we want to achieve. So we can start with a simple scale value right over here. In these brackets, we can either target the x-axis or the y-axis. We can achieve this by entering 1 or 2 values. So right here, we can enter something like 2. And if you save that, the box grows twice than what it was initially. What you will pick up though is that since we specified 1 value, it grows in both the x and y axis. You can notice what I mean properly if we go in here, separate it by a comma, and use our y axis and then say 1. Now if I save that, this means that the y-axis will keep its original size, but the x-axis will still grow twice than what it was initially. If you really wanted to though, you can always use the transform property again, and then target the scale x or y individually. In addition to that, this scale value also has a 3D transformation, which is called scale 3D. Now in here, this value can take up to 3 values as if we were in a 3D space: the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. If we are working with the 3D elements, then the z-axis would move the box towards us or away from us, but it will not work here as we're working with the 2D elements. So I'll take these two away so we can talk about our next property over here. So the scale we don't need anymore. Now the next one is known as rotate, as you can see over here. It works about the same way to the scale value in terms of what values you can target, like the x and y axis specifically along with its 3D values. We can target the rotate value as we've done over here, and then we enter the amount of degrees or like a box or rotate bar. In this case, I use something like 45 degrees. And now if I save that, you can see that the box rotates 45 degrees. And we can also use a negative value to rotate it the other way. If we use a negative value here, the box rotates the other side. With the rotate 3D property, what you'll notice is that we can type rotate 3D. Now what this does, we need the x value, the y value, the z value, and then the degrees at the end over here, and that's how the box will take effect. Now we're going to talk about the third value over here, so I'm just going to take this away again. Now this third value is known as translate. This is basically us moving the box the amount that we want to. So in order to see this, we can add something like 50 pixels on the x and 50 pixels on the y axis. And if I save that, the box has moved 50 pixels to the right and 50 pixels to the bottom. And we can also exaggerate this just so you can see 150 pixels, it pushes it to the right, and then 150 pixels and it pushes it down. You can also target the axis individually like we've done with the previous properties, and then the 3D property works about the same way. The fourth value that we'll work with this transform property is known as the skew value. So skew. This basically skews the element and uses degrees like our rotate value, but I don't think the skew value has a skew 3D. It only uses the x and y axis. So I'm just going to use 20 degrees on both the x and y axis just so you can see how it looks like. And if I save this, the box should be skewed 20 degrees in the x and y axis. But now you might be wondering to yourself, why would we even use these properties to transform our elements? To answer that, we can achieve a lot of nice designs if you had an idea you wanted to implement, but you could also use this in CSS animations, transitions, or using pseudo classes. In fact, we can do a quick example right now. So I'm just going to target the box again over here, and then I'll add a pseudo class of hover. And I'll just add some curly brackets. If you're wondering what the pseudo property is, I've got a video that'll pop up on the right and should be in the description below. So now we can just take our transform property over here, and then we can add it to a hover down here. Now if we save that, what you notice is that our box returns to normal and should only apply this transform property as soon as you hover over it. So now if I do, it skews like we did before. But what you notice is that this is not really smooth, it happens immediately. So we can solve this by going down here and adding a transition property. So we can add 5 seconds and then ease. Now if I save this, it should be a lot smoother to get in there. And if you wanted to, you can try out this example that I've created over here. It uses the box shadow property and the transform skew property with a bit of transitions with it. That's just one of the few examples. Now finally, we can talk about the last property of today. Now this one is a bit more complex than what we've discussed today over here. So this one is known as transform and then it's a matrix. This method combines all 2D transform methods into one. So instead of the 1 or 3 values that we had earlier for the other methods, this one takes 6 values at once. The first one is scale x, second one is skew y, third one is skew x, the fourth one is scale y, then the fifth one is translate x, and then the final one is translate y. I don't use it a whole ton myself, but just make sure that the scale x and the scale y aren't 0, because then your box wouldn't appear over here. Then from there, you can either target your translate values over here or your skew values over here. With that, I don't think there's much to discuss when it comes to the transform property. If you have any questions, leave them down below and I'll answer as best I can. With that, I hope you guys found this video informative, and I'll see you in the next one.